Hi everybody, how's it going? Happy Thursday. The stream was delayed this week because I was out chasing eclipses. I hope some of you got to go see it too. It was pretty cool, wasn't it? Assuming some of you are located in the US. This eclipse hit the US very well. They happen other times in other places in the world. Anyway, a lot of us were spending our Monday looking at the sky and our Tuesdays sitting in traffic. So I hunkered down near where I was observing the eclipse in Oregon and, had some fun up there, which is why this is delayed a couple days. So I guess we should get to it. One thing you'll notice is I have a nice blue background today. I went out and I bought one of those chroma key things, although I cannot personally do green screen because I have green hair and I like wearing green. So we're going to give it a spin with blue. This is my first time ever experimenting with a chroma key, so thanks for hanging in there with all the weird visual artifacts that are sure to happen as we code. Anyway, let's get to the action. Let's actually get to the technical stuff, the reason you're listening to me yammer like I am right now. We'll hope my battery holds out on my laptop. And here we go. So this is what we are up to today. We are going to be doing some video frame extraction. But to give some more context, let's take a step further back. What are we doing at a whole project level? We are working on a demo, or rather a re-implementation of a demo that I've done at work on my for my developer advocacy for Google Cloud Platform. We have this cool demo where we take a bunch of phones and we do one of these Matrix the movie bullet time GIF things. Using photos from 19 phones, coordinated, and having the frames extracted and stitched together using features of Google Cloud Platform. It turns out that getting the timing absolutely perfectly right is actually kind of tricky, and a lot of the complexity, a lot of the effort went into getting that right. This is our first implementation of this. We did this a few years ago. We learned a lot from it, and new features of Google's Cloud Platform have come out since then. So I'm doing a re-implementation in this stream. Whereas originally it was built by a team of 5 or 6 engineers in a 3-week blitz, I'm building it out slowly, just me alone, with the help of my former intern, who did a bunch of work on it before he returned to school. And so I'm kind of soloing it, so it's going a little slower, but that is okay because we'll still get an awesome demo out of it. The reason for the re-implementation is the original version was a little bit time-consuming to set up, a little bit fussy, and difficult to scale out into many, many, many instances. So a lot of the work going into this is going into making it multi-tenant, easy to scale up, easy for people to create their own, more cost-effective to operate, and more features like giving people more options for these snazzy pictures to pick from. So you'll get to pick from a menu after you've done the jump in the freeze frame. A big part of the implementation of this new version is using Google Cloud Functions, which is kind of like Amazon AWS Lambda, which is a JavaScript function in the sky, part of that whole new serverless trend. And I'm using Firebase, specifically the Firebase real-time database, and its close integration with Cloud Functions for a lot of the signaling and other image processing. So over the past few weeks, we've spent some time extracting assuming we started in the middle, which is a weird place to start, but I'll explain that in a future stream. What we worked on assuming we had a bunch of frames sitting in a storage bucket. We spent the time working on a Cloud Function to combine them into a GIF. And we were successful. We did all these different things. We spent some time tinkering around with ImageMagick on the command line, which I didn't have much experience to prior to the stream. Then we spent some time getting that bound into node.js, which became apparent I also didn't have much experience with. I spent most of the stream fumbling around with promises. Then we took all that stuff, got it integrated into storage as a source and then a sink. So basically pull all the frames from storage bucket and then push them back into a storage bucket when we were done. And then finally, we just kind of refactored it and got it to signal with the Firebase real-time database. We were working on kind of the opposite component today, which is extracting the frames Frames to GIFs. No, that's wrong. This title is wrong. Video clip to frames. So this time I'm going to be starting probably a multi-week series where I'm going to be writing another cloud function. And this one does actually processes earlier in the pipeline. And what it does is it takes the video clips from the phones and then it extracts the frames from those video clips. Because this is how CloudSpin actually works. It records videos on each one of the phones, and then we have some kind of external signal in the video that allows us to synchronize all those video clips. Because we don't have a good way of telling the phones all to start at the exact same time, if only because the phones are Android phones and they're not running a real-time operating system. They're running an operating system that has like best approximation of precise timing. So we need to do the synchronization in post-processing, which is what a lot of CloudSpin work is. So previously what we did is we assumed we had frames that were all for the same slice in time, and we combined them into a GIF. This time what we're going to be doing is we're going to be taking all of the video clips that come out of the phones, which are going to be staggered in time a little bit, and hopefully have at least one slice of overlapping time. And we're going to be extracting all of those into a whole bunch of frames and putting them in cloud storage. And since we have a lot of capacity, you know, one of the benefits of being in the cloud is you have like a push button and a whole bunch of capacity pops up right away. What we're going to do is we're just going to extract all of the frames from the video clips. So it's going to look something like this. It's just the same diagram I had for the last cycle, which is imagine a phone. It's uploading a video clip. It's putting it into storage. That's going to trigger the start of a cloud function execution. The function is going to go and it's going to download the video clip, and then it's going to use ffmpeg to extract a whole bunch of frames from that video clip. Then it's going to take all of those frames and it's going to write them up to storage. Some of the stuff that's a little bit different than this diagram that I stole from the documentation is we're going to be using the Firebase real-time database for signaling both at the beginning up here as well as at the end. Actually, I'm not sure. We might be triggering this one off of just a storage write, because this is kind of an expand step, in which case we don't need to use the real-time database to do synchronization. But we will use the real-time database to do the triggering of the next step, because we want the next function to run, which is going to be doing analysis of those frames. We want that. We want that to probably wait to run until after all of the frames are uploaded. But we can figure that out afterwards. Then what we can do is the next step in the process, which in this picture is a phone, but in our case is probably going to be another cloud function, is going to download all those frames and do something else with it. In our case, what this is actually going to be is another cloud function that, let me grab one of these little text box. Here we go. We're actually going to have another cloud function that does something a little bit different. This one is going to look for timing signal in. So what this is going to do is it's going to go through and it's going to look for a timing signal in each frame. Previously, we used a pulse of sound, like a sound of a clap, which some of you who've done video stuff before may recognize. But it's a common trick for synchronizing frames. We had a synthetic clap that we were pushing into all the audio jacks on the phones. We're going to be doing something a little bit different, which is I'm actually going to try and put a clock into the video frame and then use some of our Cloud Vision APIs and stuff to look for the clock and extract the time from that part of the video frame, which Hassani, my intern from earlier this summer, did a bunch of great work on, and there's a whole bunch of that we can borrow to make to move this right along. So basically, the result of my intern's internship indicated that this is probably going to work. We have a pretty high degree of confidence that where this design is actually going to function. So with that done, let's make our to-do list for today in the format of a slide deck, because I am a slide deck speaker, so slide decks are something I like working with. To do. So first of all, we're going to, there's a lot of these steps are kind of borrowed from the previous one. Let's get rid of all the strike through and then just change it from creating GIF to extracting frames. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to unstrike through all this, figure out how to extract frames. So we're going to use ffmpeg to figure out how to extract those frames on the command line. Then we're going to do that same thing from node.js. Then we're going to get source video from a storage bucket. Then we're going to put the frames back into a bucket. Then we'll probably spend some time cleaning up hard-coded mess. And then maybe we'll wire up this to the real-time database. Actually, we're definitely going to have to wire it up to the real-time database a little bit, because even if we're not using it for internal signaling on Cloud Functions, we still want to have a way for the operator of this demo and the person getting their cool GIF made to be able to figure out, like, to be able to see into the stats. So basically, we have a status dashboard that I'm going to be building in a future stream, and we're going to need to write some kind of status to the real-time database. Sound like a plan? I hope so, because this is what I'm going to be doing. Okay, so let's get this out of the way and get to the actual code. So I have prepared a video ahead of time. As I do, it is going to reveal to you how messy my workspace is, because I just recorded it using a phone. And it is a picture of me rotating around a coffee cup. It is about 5 seconds long, which is a good estimate. That's actually how long we expect to be recording in the real Cloud Spin rig. We hope we get enough overlap from a 5-second recording. This might end up being a little bit longer, but I wouldn't expect it to be like more than like 10 seconds maybe. Oh yeah, coffee today is brought to you by a mug from Firebase. This is actually the from the older logo from when Firebase was a younger product, and it had a logo that looked like a can, the beloved can logo. This is actually a rejected mug. We got a sample of these, and we decided we didn't like it with a little circle around the logo. So we actually changed to just the can. That was before the more modern Firebase logo, which is the cool little flame diamond rhombuses. Parallelograms. Actually, I don't even know. It's just a quadrilateral. I guess it is. It's like a kite shape. I don't know a more formal name for a kite shape. But oh yeah, this is actually one of the logos that people were kicking around for a while. A lightning bolt in a cloud. But I guess it was a little bit too generic. So we ended up going with the awesome little flame logo, which I love so much. More coffee. Okay, so we have a video. I have a very limited experience using ffmpeg. So first I'm going to spend some time just kind of tinkering around with it here in my terminal. I have installed it, and I actually use this to do trimming on my videos before I upload them to YouTube and to the Twitch video archive, just to trim off the dead time in the beginning and the end, and edit out any periods of time where I may have leaked out API keys or email addresses. It actually works really well for it because it can do trimming a video without doing a full transcode, which is actually pretty impressive based on what I know about how video encoding works. Yeah, basically video compression borrows information from the future and from the past, and sometimes even from the future to do basically there's this thing called a gap. It's a long story. I won't get into it right now. Video encoding is pretty amazing, and I'm actually very impressed when people figure out ways to do things fast, like what ffmpeg can do with trimming. Anyway, so we have a video there. It's coffee time. We have some other artifacts of the previous iteration, the spin GIF and the jump images. So coffee time, which we just played, looks like this. It is about 5 seconds long. It is how big it is, 8 megabytes, and it's actually recorded off of an iPad, which is not the phone I'm going to be using for the actual demo, but I didn't have the phone handy. So this will get us started. So I know very little about using this. I've just typed in some commands I found in Stack Overflow. I know that -I is for input, and I assume that it'll give me an error or some information about the video if I just say like, hey, here's a video, take a look. Oh, what do you know? It gave us a bunch of information. Surprising amount of information. It's a dump of everything, all sorts of cool stuff. Okay, so it gives us configuration information on ffmpeg, like metadata. It gives us the input. We are reading from coffeetime.mov. I guess this is the container format, 3PG, I don't know some of those acronyms, M4A, MP4. Those all look like video containers, which is kind of like a bucket that you can put audio and video tracks in. When I created it, which is, that timestamp looks a little off. That might be UTC timestamp. I recorded it with an Apple iPad Pro, running 10.3.3, because 10.3.2 had security bugs in it, so if you're still running that version of iOS, you should update. It is 4.57 seconds, 15 meg per second video rate, bit rate. H.264 is a video codec, which makes a lot of sense because that's what those devices use. 1080p resolution at 29.98 FPS. This might be useful later. I don't actually know what TBR means, but it looks like some close approximation of FPS, probably a more precise definition. And more metadata about the creation time, the rotation of the device that was playing it. I guess that's so that it doesn't have to do, like it probably just encodes with the orientation of the CCD and then adds this metadata so the playback, it can rotate it during playback, which is pretty cool. And then stream 0:1, this looks like an audio track, AAC. Again, MP4A, MP4 audio track. This definitely makes a lot of sense for Apple products. And, oh, there's another one, another data track, which is none. Media data handler. I don't know what those are at all. Okay. So we have a bunch of different stuff in that container in stream 0. But all we really care about is this stream 0:0, this H.264, and then we have that many frames. So if we take this, so we have 4.57 seconds times 29.98 FPS. I'm going to do a little arithmetic. How long was it? It was 4.57 seconds. 0.57. I think that's how. Is it double curly brace? At one point I taught myself how to do arithmetic on the command line. I think it's just this. This is embarrassing, but something I want to learn. That's pretty weird. I didn't expect it to say that at all. Oh, that's the splat operator. Oh. Okay, now I'm going to fumble around and do some arithmetic on the command line, but there's another way I can do arithmetic on my computer. I can do it in Spotlight. So we should get 137 frames out. That txt, we should frame, expected frame. $137 frames. And the reason I'm noting this down is I just want to have a sanity check that I'm doing this properly once I extract the frames. Okay, so now how do I learn how to extract frames from a video clip? I do it the same way anyone else in the world would do. Just because I code in front of streams and because I work at Google or whatever, doesn't mean I won't just Google it. ffmpeg, extract frames. Wow, this is a common query, and not surprisingly, the first couple results are Stack Overflow results, which I'm not logged into, so I get a big old thingy at the top. Let's dismiss that. And then we have one from from the documentation, which is probably the most useful. So the actual official documentation, which I'll at least read before I disregard and go straight to Stack Overflow. The VFrames option, excuse me. The VFrames option extracts, put a single frame from the video into an image file at a particular timestamp. This output will seek to this timestamp. That's SS is the seek. I'll put 1 frame from that position into a PNG file. Okay. I'll put 1 frame every second. That's pretty cool. So that puts basically you can use that to output every nth frame. I'll put 1 image for every iframe. What is an iframe? Is that image frame? Because I know p frames are like full frames. I don't really know what an iframe is. Let's ask the world, the internet. YouTube videos, iframe. That's the wrong. Oh, that's the HTML element iframe. Well, let's just figure it out by experimentation. So it looks like this might actually be the command we want to run. Oh, that is an ugly command. Let's just run it, see what happens. Oh, it gives us pings. Cool. So we're just going to paste that in. We do like a SQL style query against the video. The fact that ffmpeg supports a syntax like that, like it has its own query language, that's pretty awesome. Okay, so it's going to give us up to 4 digits of pings, and I guess it's 0 padded. And the vsync, I don't know what that parameter's for. And VFR is the video filter. Okay, let's see what happens. It runs, and we have 5 frames that come out. Okay, let's take a look at them. This might just be the P frames. Well, that's pretty cool. So that looks like it does almost what we want. So let's take a look at out frame every 10 minutes. Output a frame every minute. Oh, my monitor just turned off. Okay. I have a lot of different adapters on my monitor because it's like, it uses this weird dual DVI link, and I have a USB-C laptop. It's crazy. So every once in a while it flickers out. So anyway, we're going to go back. I think this command up here, or some variation of it, might be what we want. I'll put 1 frame every minute. Output 1 single frame of video into an image file. So maybe I can just ask for 100 frames. So our input is going to be coffee time. Oh, actually first, let's delete all I already did. So out.png, does it know how to do that variable expansion, or that like the frame numbering right there? Let's use that. Let's get out 100 frames. We are not going to seek it all. We are going to start right at the beginning. And we are going to use coffee time as our... Oh no, okay. For a second I thought I was still muted, which would be tragic. Okay, so coffee time is the input. V-frames, we're asking for 100, and then we're outputting them to frame something, something, something. And it looks like it's probably working. Oh my gosh, we have 100 frames and a lot of data. How much did we actually get? Do we have 200 megs and 223 megs in this directory, which is a lot more than was there just a moment ago. So this is a little data machine. Oh my gosh, it's our video, it's all the frames. Okay, so we have a way to do that. So now we need a way to get all of the frames out of a video of unspecified length. So I'm curious, what happens if I just say v-frames? And it says at least 1 output file must be specified. V-frames 10,000? Is it just going to sit there and make 10,000 frames at the last frame, or is it going to stop at the end? Which should be about 137 frames. Hey, it stopped at 137 frames. Which does exactly what we need, but it is terrible because we have a hard-coded giant value. Let's learn more about this v-frames option. So let's look at the man page. The notoriously difficult to read. Okay, sets the number. So man pages. If you haven't used them before, you can type man and then any command in Linux land or any POSIX compliant operating system, maybe even in Windows PowerShell now. Anyway, you can, and you can search by using / just like if you were using VI. Oh, and question mark search is backwards. So here's the thing we use. We use the -v frames option, which is set the number of output frames you want. This is an obsolete alias for vframes -v, which you should use instead. So we should probably use that instead. Why not? And I should keep drinking water so my voice does not get out. Because believe it or not, the biggest limitation on my ability to do this code streaming is just my voice holding up. Anyway, okay. So we want frames -v, which you should use instead. Okay, let's go find frames -v. Frames! Where are you, frames? Let's go up to the beginning. Apparently -frames, oh here we are, is a output stream. Stop writing to the stream after frame count frames. D-frames, specify the number of data frames in your output. This is an obsolete alias for frames -d. Okay, so -frames is our new argument, which is like, but how about frame count? How do I just get all? What I want, what I'm looking for now, which is why I'm bouncing around this man page so much, is I'm looking for a way to specify a frame count. Because what I did is I just dumped a huge number in there, way bigger than I would ever need, and it worked. But I'd like is something a little bit more matching their intended use case, where I just want all the frames. So frame count. So I'm kind of bouncing around now, looking for. Not much specified there. Okay, well, let's try running the command again. So I read in Stack Overflow earlier, if you just do BIMP, it might be faster to do the processing. Although CPU time might be cheaper than network. We'll give that a spin. But actually, let's only change one thing at a time. We'll stick with pings, and we'll do frames :v will ask for 10,000 frames, which actually I guess is not a terrible design, because it does give us an upper bound in how much computation time we're going to be using, because eventually, like, we don't want that thread running forever, just in case somehow a big video gets uploaded. So this one's took about, oh, that's a video timestamp. Hey, it worked. Let's look at this one. Hey, there's our frame. Let's try it with BMP. So the reason I'm trying BMP is I suspect my disk might be faster than the transcoding, so this might run a little faster. Oh, whoa, that didn't look right at all. Hey, there it's running. Oh, wow, it is way faster. But 822 megabytes. So that consumes a lot more space. But extracting those frames is very fast. So indeed, we might be able to save some time by doing that. Okay, so let's take some notes. We're going to look at our recent commands. Much faster. So the bitmaps are super fast because we didn't actually have to encode any of the frames. But And we will see what actually ends up being a better performance compromise in the cloud. First, extracts the first 10,000 frames. Okay, so we actually clicked on some other resources on the web. Let's see if they are actually corroborate our discovery from the actual documentation. This one says you don't actually have to FFI, and then you just give it an output. That's interesting. This one says you don't need any of those parameters. Let's give that a spin. So let's just... Okay, we've already done a cleanup. Let's try out what the Stack Overflow says and just do input and frames. Oh my gosh, that works too. So that just gets everything. Interesting. So if you don't give it a frame count, like if you remove this entire argument altogether, it just assumes you want frames. That's pretty cool. Let's see if this works for pings. We just ran it for bimps, or for bitmaps, and it does seem to work for pings, although it runs a little bit slower, because not surprising. It's making all this, encoding all of those frames before it writes it, because it's got to go in and extract, you know, it's got to decode the video, basically takes a look at it, and then makes a ping from it. Okay, that's pretty cool. And this wasn't actually the question the asker was asking, but good enough. Okay, let's see. Fastest way to extract frames using ffmpeg. What does the -r parameter do? Probably 1 every 1 second, or 1 every tick. What's become apparent to me with a lot of these command line, hey, there's that filter -v. Okay, this is using a filter. What's becoming apparent to me with like ImageMagick and ffmpeg and reading a lot of these questions, there's a lot of unnecessary parameters that get pushed into these things. And I think it's because people like, oh wow. A lot of people who answer these questions have a limited understanding of certain things and they just kind of roll with it. Although based on the complexity of this query, this answer at least understands that feature very well. Very cool. Okay, anyway, learned a little bit more about ffmpeg. So if we go back to our to-do list, have we figured out how to extract frames in the command line? Yes, we have. It is using basically no arguments to ffmpeg at all, which is surprising that the default behavior of the tool is actually what I needed, which is kind of rare. It's kind of cool. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we want to do that from node.js. So here is our actual project. We have our GIF function, we have our functions directory, and we're going to make a new function, that's the file directory. Here's the functions directory. A new file. And I'm not going to just go straight to putting it into a Cloud Function. I'm going to work my way up. So first I'm just going to try and get it to do basically this work on my local system. And we will call this frame extract.js. Do you want to add it to Git? Sure. And what do I need from here? I probably need file system. So I'm just going to copy some stuff from some other files I worked on recently. We're probably going to need some file system stuff and operating system stuff. So we're just going to start with that. Oh, it's like way smaller than I want it to be. There, that's actually probably legible to most of you. Oh yeah, and if you are watching and you're in the chat, say hi. I'm lonely. This has been a more lonely stream than usual. Probably because I'm doing it on a different day And the few people that actually come and hang out and watch me, they are somewhere else right now. Maybe at work or school or something. And what we want to do is we want to take... We want to basically run this command, except from Node. Hey, there's someone. Hey! That your green screen, though? How's it going, Slayer Darth? Slayer Darth mentioned the green screen. It's actually a blue screen because I am too green for a green screen. How's it going? Did you prefer the background with the contents of my apartment? I think I'm going to coffee pot. Yeah, the reason I decided to try the chroma key out is basically it gives me like all of this space to like not chop off code. So now if I have like something interesting behind my head, like you can see it and I don't lose quite as much screen real estate. Oh, Slayer Darth mentions that good, and yeah, I missed the hammock or whatever it was. Yes, I live in a loft in a downtown location, so I had a hammock running through my house, which is no longer on frame. At some point I'll probably, I don't know, I'll come up with some better background or something. I'm just kind of doing this incrementally more stuff, one thing at a time. And a chroma key is kind of universally useful, so I picked one up. Anyway, back to the actual code. So we want to take our node.js. We want to run a function. And we want to extract that. So last time we used spawn. Which looks something like this. We just want to run that command. This might be as simple as. So I'm going to need a way to get that binary deployed with the cloud function. But I can deal with that later. I will just assume that it is there, and that will hopefully help a little bit. So there's a question from Slayer Darth. Or maybe it was so that you can tell people you write a program to trap them inside your desktop. Maybe you're actually an animated GIF. Maybe I am actually an animated GIF. I would be a pretty long runtime animated GIF. I might encode myself using a different format then. But an interactive animated GIF, you know, I've actually seen people implement games in an animated GIF that just fed frames out over a socket. Like I saw that way back in the day on CGI days. It probably melted the servers. But you can actually like use GIF to encode all sorts of cool stuff. So anyway, we're going to do -i. This is going to run from what we learned last time is it ran from relative to where we currently are sitting, like in the directory structure. So I want to go back one directory to my wonderfully named fodder directory. Because I'm running this in functions, I'm going to go back one step to fodder. Where can I show that? I can show that in a terminal. So my code is actually running here. So I want to go into fodder, and I want to look for coffeetime.move. Coffeetime.move, which is like the move extension, which is like QuickTime uses it. I don't actually know what the container is, if it's just a different extension for MP4 or whatever. But I don't really need to care right now because ffmpeg takes care of that for me. Then the next argument I need to pass in is the frame descriptor thingamajig. So if it is as simple as this and I just need to wrap it in a cloud function, I am going to giggle. Let's find out. So we're going to go into node. And this one was called, what did I call it? Frame extract. Hey, spawn is not defined. That's because I am missing one other thing. Up. And Slayer Darth says, aspects like maths behind image optimization seems very interesting. Yeah, like image encoding and video encoding especially, the way compression works is just like, it's one of those things where like every time you dig down another layer, you find a whole bunch of information you had no idea was there. Video encoding is fascinating. And I've learned just enough to kind of fumble through my life. And it's worked out good enough. But maybe through this project, I'm going to learn a little bit more. We will find out. What I have learned is like just from looking at doing an ffmpeg on the coffee time video, I already learned that. Oh, I need to give a dash input flag. Just from kind of the little input inspection, I already learned that like the audio streams are bundled with the video streams, at least in this particular container format. I didn't know that. That's pretty cool. But I guess it makes a lot of sense. Okay, so spawn was not there, so we need to go find what thing I need to get to do the spawn thing, which I can probably grab from the index.js child process promise.spawn. Seems reasonable. So this is going to, this is going to return a promise of a spawn process then. Can you just return from the root? I don't know. Let's find out. Hey, it's running and it's taking a while. That means it might be working. So comments, ffmpeg is probably why I use fish shell so much. One of the nicest aspects of fish shell is that it is its predictive typing feature. I'm not actually familiar with the fish shell. Is that a is that like a shell like Z shell or corn shell or bash? I guess it is fish because it does end in shell, and that is the style of shell naming. I'm not familiar with fish. Right now I still use bash. I should probably take the time to learn some better, fancier shell, and I will check out fish shell. Okay. Oh, we got all our pings down. It is apparently fish is not a POSIX shell, but quite Z shell like. Cool. I have a lot of coworkers and friends that swear by Z shell, and some who swear by a K shell, a corn shell. At some point, I just need to take a day and play around with them. Okay, so we got 137 images down. Let's actually sanity check that they look like the right images. Hey, that worked pretty well. Okay. So now we have ffmpeg. So we can run it on the command line. We can spawn the process and it can do its lifting. So that means we've already completed step 2. Do that thing from node.js with a single line, which is enough for me to strike this one off. Next, what we want to do is we want to get it from a storage bucket. So that means I'm going to go to the Firebase console, whoop, which is already here in one of these little pictures, console.firebase.google.com. We're going to go into our Giphiator project. We're going to go into storage, and we're going to make a Giphiator gifs, Giphiator source. We're going to make a new bucket. Can I make a new bucket easily from here? I will add a bucket. Giphiator video. Video clips. We'll use the full long name. As you can tell, I'm a Java developer, at least by a big part of my nature. So I use very long identifier names. And Slayer Darth mentions that they will send me a short clip of me using fish shell. Yes, please do. I would love to see that. I would appreciate that very much. I love learning new things. Okay, so here we go. And let's take a look at our database to kind of get an idea. Remember this, like, we made this fixture before of what data of a running system will look like. We have different cameras that are going through their own state machines. We have rigs that have a rig identifier that are going through their own, have their own count of cameras and a display name. We have sessions, and a session is like a single set of GIFs being created. So we have a session identifier. We're probably gonna end up with like a GIF identifier too, because we're probably gonna make a bunch of GIFs from each one of those sessions. So a session is a collection of video clips. I'm actually going to add a little documentation here, which is kind of weird. What? I'm going to add a what field. Session is a Okay, so I had a little documentation so that I can figure out like what this information means later. So a session is a collection of video clips captured by a specific rig at one specific slice of time. Question, so you're making a bunch of GIFs for me? Oh, you shouldn't have, said Slayer Darth. Yes, there will be gifts for everyone in the form of GIFs. Because who would want something, who wouldn't want more GIFs in their life, or GIFs? I'm going to stick with GIFs. I'm going to be that kind of troublemaker. Okay, so I have my session identifier, and these are organized by rig ID. So there's the rig ID right there. Okay, so foobar is a rig ID, and session 1 is a session identifier. So that means in this bucket, probably going to have different paths. Are paths the best way to do this? Probably. It's what I did before. I'll stick with that. So I'm going to continue to build out my little... Oh no, wait, first I need... Is the session identifier going to be... Oh, it's going to be globally unique, so I'll just use a session identifier. So create this. So we're going to do session 01, which in real life is going to be a big ol' ugly, like, dynamically generated, universally unique, monotonically increasing Firebase identifier from the real-time database. And in there, we are going to upload a file. We're going to upload coffee time, because it is coffee time. And whoop, it goes on up. And actually the upload, the right of this video is what I'm going to use to trigger the frame extraction. And it says there are no videos, but there are videos. And here we can, okay, so now that this is up here, we can go back into our coding stuff, and we can probably borrow a whole bunch of stuff from the previous thing we wrote. Right, let's. So if we go back in index.js, we need storage, which we already have ready to go. We have index, back from index. What else do we want? So we are going to, this one is going through and is getting a bunch of identifiers from the Firebase real-time database write event. It's going to run Giphizer. Hard-coded bucket names, which is something I'll probably copy over. Oh yeah, I was actually gonna like do proper like variable expansion. One of those newfangled JavaScript features. We have a temp directory we're gonna work from. Yeah, we can copy a lot of this stuff out. Let's add some console stuff. Okay, so I'm gonna make a new function. Is there anything I should do from here? I guess not. So, function. So we'll stick it into a function, because why not? And we'll run it. So what we have to do is, oh my gosh, all these temporary variables and stuff. Okay. So our source bucket name is Giphizer video clips, which I'm actually going to rename to video clip bucket name, long identifiers, yo. And that is Giphizer video clips. Is my variable name actually longer than the bucket name? They're pretty close. It might be longer. I don't feel bad about that at all. And the output is going to be put into another bucket. Oh my gosh, we're creating buckets left and right. And that bucket's going to be, not surprisingly, Giphizer frames. Wait, I just created another directory? That is not what I wanted to do. I clicked on the wrong button. I created a directory. I want a bucket. I have to go to the little dot 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 menu. Giphizer. Giphizer frames. Got it. So we create another bucket with kind of default security rules. And this is for use, we'll take care of that later. So there's our actual source bucket, which is going to be a video clip bucket. do clip bucket name, GIF bucket name, frame bucket name, and okay, so we have a bunch of different variables. We have a temporary directory, which we're going to need again. And what else do we have in here that we did? So, we had a hard-coded number of frames we downloaded, and then we created a collection of promises that we used to pull them all down. But we're only downloading one thing now, so we can just use a single promise. So we'll grab this. We're going to create our first promise, which is just going to be downloading. So our session ID, which will be hard-coded for now. So create a to-do so we can know to clean this up later. Get session ID. Get these hard-coded values from incoming event. Because, you know, one actually source of some of the production bugs I have is like, especially on much larger projects than this, I have some hard-coded temporary variable, and then when I push it to staging or set it in and continuous integration runs, that's when I discover that I forgot to update that. So now, as a practice, I always stick a to-do in there so I can search my code for to-dos afterwards. So our session ID is the wonderfully named _session01. Slayer Darth reports that trying to learn how to record a video on the command line using ffmpeg. I didn't even know ffmpeg could be used as a recording tool. I've only ever used it to manipulate existing videos. That is cool. Let me know how it goes. I certainly prefer to use command line tools for almost anything I can get away with, just because it just tends to be a lot. Once you get it working, well, it's a lot easier to integrate into scripts and other stuff like that too. But once you get it going, it's just a lot easier to deal with. Okay, so source bucket, we frame file name. Instead of a frame file name, here we are getting a clip file name. And so we need to hard code that also. This will also be coming from the event when it's there for real, and this is coffee time. How could I forget? And Slayer Darth reports you can pass the -an flag to not record audio. That's cool. Especially for like hacking around like on a project like this, that audio is completely superfluous and not useful at all. So being able to record with ffmpeg on the command line or something like that and stripping audio off would certainly make tinkering around a lot easier. Okay, so we have a temporary variable for our session ID and our clip file name, which we're going to download. And we're going to download to a temp directory, and we're going to maintain the clip file name. So the assumption here is that the clip file name will be unique on that function, which is probably safe. I'm not concerned about having like, because each version's running in its own sandbox instance, I'm not worried about them like different cloud spins going on at the same time, stepping on each other's toes. So Slayer Darth reports that some command flags I kind of know from experience what they are, but some flags aren't really covered too well by the man pages, or not covered at all by the man pages. Like -q, for instance, I tend to think that it means quiet. For example, not reporting a bunch of stuff to standard output. And yes, one thing that kind of like drives me nuts about different commands like that is even like simple commands like PS, which is a process viewer, depending on what operating system you're running on, whether you're running on, like I'm running on a FreeBSD derivative operating system, OS X or Mac OS now, I guess, or Linux, like some of the very common ones for like getting a list of all processes running vary from one system to another. And when I used to use Solaris a lot in production, I had similar experiences where things were slightly different. It's like, POSIX, I guess the POSIX standard only gets you so far. Certain things are different. And despite conventions, people will make different choices about how they implement their commands, how much time they spend documenting their man pages, and all that stuff. But fortunately, we live in the 21st century and we have Stack Overflow, which is great glue to solve a lot of those problems. But sometimes I worry that it's kind of like a crutch, and it's making us, it's an excuse to not make our stuff as consistent or as good as it may have been in the past when we didn't have wonderful resources like Stack Overflow. So anyway, so we've downloaded this file. Now, okay, so next we want to do a dot then. Okay, so this is going to return a promise of the download. And then let me remember my syntax for promises. Okay, let me just do a dot then and then a little arrow function. So back to our frame extractor. So assuming this download is successful, we're going to try to extract the frames from it. So, and now we will use the calculated file name in their temporary directory. Boop. And then we're going to output them into the temp directory again. So let me put a hard break here so that it looks a little bit more readable. And I wonder if this can take paths. I think we are about to find out. And then I should probably not hard code that frame identifier. Okay, well, I think this will work. Let's give it a spin. Let's see what happens. Oh, but do I need to wait for that promise to return before? So the chain of promises, I need to return promises at all. Okay, so I think I need to add a, let's see what happens. I don't know if this will exit before the promises finish running or if it'll actually wait. Let's do return. Return a promise from our function. Maybe that'll work. So let's give it a spin. Frame extract.js. And it crashed right away. That's pretty cool. So storage source bucket is not defined. Source bucket. Oh, well, duh. So we're going into the video clips bucket and we're getting that. Then let's do okay, let's add some logging so we can know that we're actually extracting the frames. This is downloading. I'll add this up here. Downloading the video clip. And let's give this a spin again. Hey, it's downloading video clip. Unhandled promise rejection warning. Unhandled promise rejection. Invalid grant. Seems that I do not have all the permissions I need to download stuff from this bucket. Which is not all that surprising. Where did my key come from before? Did I ever run this on the command line directly? Okay, so what's happening is it's downloading the video clip, and then the video clip, the actual download is going, meh, you don't actually have access to that bucket. Which we can see here. This is one of the cool things about promises is if you kind of assume that like it's always going to work, it'll crash in the middle instead of like just running with like an inconsistent state, which is, you know, kind of the default behavior in a lot of other computing environments. So let's take a look, and let's take a look at the permissions on these various buckets. So before we were pulling from Giphiator source, and this one allows read and write if request auth is not null. Giphiator video clips allows read and write if a request is not null, which is the same. So one of the things I assumed is the security rules might be different between the two buckets we ran. So that requires users to be authenticated. Okay, so we still want to enforce that authentication because we don't want someone monkeying around. But, so Firebase list, which I don't know if it's going to set up the keys in the way. Well, we are authenticated. I just verified that I'm authenticated to Firebase. But how did I authenticate to this before? Oh, wow, all sorts of stuff. I'm not sure I had to before. Interesting. Well, let's see if index has already been kind of changed it over to the Cloud Function version. So that means I don't know off the top of my head how to fix this invalid grant. Okay. Well, for the sake of keeping the stream running along, I'm going to do something terrible. Well, not that terrible. I am going to change my security rules and allow global reads. If I think I actually have to have an expression here. So I am allowing everyone to read, and I'm restricting rights to authenticated users only. So just in case there's anybody mean watching, you can't push a bunch of junk into my bucket, but you can read it now probably. Let's see if that fixes this grant. Still have an invalid grant. Let's look at invalid grant, Google Cloud Storage. And of course, go to JavaScript or go to Stack Overflow, see if we can find an answer. And it says 400 bad requests. This is essentially what I'd expect if I dug deeper into it. So it looks like it has to do with incorrect service account ID. So it looks like I have some authentication stuff that I have not put in there. So let's go take a look back at the file. Not surprising, I didn't actually learn a lot from that, but I should probably poke around in here to see if there's any authentication stuff that I have just left out. Oh, Firebase functions. I wonder if that sets up the authentication stuff that gets used by Cloud Storage. Let's randomly try that. So we're going to go up into here. We're going to add another dependency, Firebase functions, which we're not actually using, but it might just like magically fix our authentication stuff. Nope, it did not magically fix it, despite my hope. Is there anything else in this one? So we have the spawn, we have GCS. Do I have GCS? I have, otherwise it would just be like explode right away. But where is authentication actually handled in this function? I don't think it's handled anywhere, because when I deploy it to Cloud Function land, this isn't something I have to worry about. It just kind of works. Well, there's another thing I can do, which is, rather than fix the local one right now, I can just deploy it. Let's do that. So I'm going to skip over one of the steps I'd normally do, which is tinker around to make sure my local environment is working. But I only have like about 10 minutes left in the stream. So we're going to do some bad engineering practices, and we're going to skip right ahead to just triggering from Cloud Functions in the cloud. So Cloud Functions for Firebase. This is the way we're binding to Cloud Functions. And we're going to use a Cloud Storage trigger. So Slayer Darth mentions, I have a few of my own projects on the back burner. Difficult to know which ones to focus on. I think a lot of us have that same problem. I have a list that must be hundreds of projects long of different projects that I just kind of keep on the back burner. And actually starting to stream has really helped me get more focus into some of them. Like this project's been on my back burner for a couple years that I've wanted to revisit this silly demo. So you should stream some more, or hackathons. I love bringing my list of projects to hackathons, and then like I'll usually work on one, but I'll usually pitch my like a few of the other projects, and it's really cool when other people build them for me as part of their project, especially if they manage to win or something, which is awesome. And Slayer Darth mentions could work on my Chrome plugin, but no offense to you as a Google employee, but the Chrome API naming conventions are so bad. Yeah, that is one thing a lot of us at Google kind of joke about. We're not the best at naming things in general. I'll be one of the first to admit that naming is something that we're kind of hard. Okay, so I've gone into the reference docs. I want to create a storage change function, which looks something like this. Okay, so we want to do an on change functions as storage. Okay, so exports.extract. See, what was the naming convention? Okay, exports that. Create a new function called frame extract. And that is going to be a functions.storage.bucket.bucket name .object .onChange, and onChange has an event that comes in, and we get another little arrow function. So let's take all the stuff we wrote, boop, remove it, and it's auto format our code, which the hotkey does not seem to be working today. So I'll just do it from the menu. Okay, so we're running that, running Giphizer. That's not right at all. Running frame extractor. We have an event coming in. We have our source bucket, which is Giphizer video clips. So what this is going to do is whenever there's a change to an object on the Giphizer video clips, we're going to run this. And I think that should just kind of run. That's where the frames are going to get written to afterwards, which is why it's gray, because we haven't done that step yet. So actually, I'm going to take this function. I'm going to copy it out. I'm going to move it into the index.js, because that's where other functions live right now. And let's Firebase. It works better if I actually type it right. So let's just deploy our functions. We're just going to deploy everything. You can actually deploy just one function now, which runs a little bit faster. But I didn't know the name. I guess I didn't know if it was going to like change or normalize the name at all. So while that is deploying, Slayer Darth mentions my biggest struggle, finding the motivation after programming at work from 9 to 6 or 7 p.m. Yeah, after a full day of work, it is hard to spend time working on side projects, which is one reason I actually love hackathons so much, is because they are time boxed. Like there's a fixed beginning and a fixed end that happens later. And it's also an opportunity to do software development with people I don't normally develop with. For example, with, so we're going to go to, taking a quick break. I'm going to open up the logs tab for our functions. But yeah, it's one of the reasons I love hackathons. I get to do a pickup group and kind of expand my horizon. But by the time that Sunday rolls around, it's just done. Like I never have to look back if I don't want to. Okay, so I have this one open, which is showing our logs. I'm going to keep that in frame. And I'm going to have another browser tab open, which will be showing the storage tab. Back to Firebase. So Slayer Darth reports here, Google is very flexible when it comes to working hours. It is indeed. Google tends not to care too much when you get your work done, as long as you get it done. But by the same token, we're also kind of like, as any organization, there's a little bit of, there's a little bit of competitiveness between people at the organization. So it's very exciting. It's wonderful working with so many other brilliant people. But you know, a rat race is still a rat race sometimes. And Slayer Darth mentions, says, thinking of taking part in one of those weekend data dives. Yeah, like there's a whole bunch of names for similar things to hackathons. You got data dives, you got hackathons, you have game jams. There's a whole bunch of different names for similar things where you come and hack on a project for a while. And they're tons of fun. I love them a lot. Okay, so we were going to video clips. And now, so if I change this, my function should run. And I have not put the short circuits in to prevent it from running on deletion yet. So I am just going to continue to upload files. And hopefully, so pretty much, oh wait, that didn't work at all. Any change is going to trigger it to run on the hard-coded coffee time file. So this is running right now. This file is uploading. Once it finishes, it should run. It is hard-coded to run on coffeetime.move. Then we should see some functions in our frame extractor, or some log events. No log events yet. Oh, there it ran, and it downloaded the video clip. Has it done anything else yet? And this is running on kind of a default oh, there it goes. Yeah, it's running on a default size spawn ffmpeg. Okay, so it is complaining because ffmpeg is not on the Cloud Function. So ImageMagick is there by default. ffmpeg does not seem to be on the virtual machines that it is running on right now. But I think this is a problem that we're going to solve next time. We need to figure out how to package up the binary for ffmpeg in a binary that is compatible with the runtime of Cloud Functions. So I need to figure out how to make that binary. I have to figure out how to upload it, which may or may not be the same binary that's running on my computer. I'm not sure if I even want to make that assumption. I'd like to explicitly make one that's that's built for the right target platform. Then we want to be able to push that up to the Cloud Functions runtime environment. And then this function should work. We also have the permissions issues for accessing storage from the local system. So let's stop there for the day. Let's make some to-dos for that. So getting the source image from the storage bucket, we want to get the source images from the storage bucket, get permissions working on the local version. So my local development environment, get all of my permissions happy. Then we want to put the frames back into the bucket. We have a new step, which is get ffmpeg binary running in the Cloud Function. Yeah, I know you can set up pretty much any binary you want, but need to make sure that it's always like the right binary for the target system. And I suspect that this is just going to be taken care of by NPM, probably, hopefully, but it's definitely something to check for. So I don't know how I would definitely do a sanity check. I guess I could deploy from a Raspberry Pi, which is running an ARM chip, and see if it breaks the deployment then. I'll find a way to verify that. I'll find some other cloud VM that's running a different kind of CPU architecture, see if that fixes it. Then we want to be able to put the frames back in the bucket. We have not done. Clean up our hard-coded mess that is currently under the way and in progress of being created. And then finally, deal with the real-time database signaling. Okay, so we got a couple things done today, and we have some new tasks for the near future. So we have something kind of in a good spot right now. So I'm going to add all this stuff to get for now. So early version of frame extraction kind of working. So committed to my local Git repo, and think we're pretty much done for today, but there's still some comments there I haven't responded to. Sarah Darth again says, there was a really cool hackathon I found where there were no prizes and it focuses more just on the participants working on what they want. That's the trouble with a lot of hackathons these days. I think they're about prize attainment. I totally have the same opinion. And actually, I spend a lot of time focusing on hackathons that have, there's like a maximum purse. So if there's a way for anybody to win like more than a few $100s, I actually don't attend the hackathon. So I tend to focus on hackathons that are focused on smaller groups. So I tend to target hackathons that are like 50 to 200 people in total size. I love ones that have like a structure that supports pickup groups. So for example, like a pitch session is a big signal that pickup groups are going to be welcome, because I love meeting new people at hackathons. And then also like the prize. So if the purse is like $1 million or something, I'm not going to go, because those are just not as fun. I definitely agree with you that the ones that are the best are the ones where you get to meet new people and focus on actually building stuff, which I think is kind of the origins of hackathons. If you look back to hackathons in like the 60s, 70s, and 80s, that's people just got together to build cool stuff. And that's what this should really be about. So anyway, I'm going to wrap up for now. I'm going to go back and do the rest of my day job. Thanks so much for tuning in, and we will pick up this again next week. We'll pick up from this spot and get these frames extracted. So until then, have a great rest of your week, and thanks a lot for tuning in.